The Canes Conference Finals futility continues. We've got Stanley Cup playoff action to talk about right now on Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before, only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Hey, hockey fans, welcome to Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thanks for making Locked On NHL Game Night your place to get a recap of the night in the NHL. We are available 7 days a week, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, an LA Kings fan on the West Coast. He is Shukri Wrights, a Boston Bruins fan on the East Coast. Together, we're here to discuss all the goals, saves, big moments, and stories from the night in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And Shu, the defending Stanley Cup champs, looking pretty good right now.
What's going on? They are looking pretty good. Unfortunately, there is no sign of a storm surge down in the Carolinas. The only surge that there is a wave of cats. Meow. And unfortunately, the Carolina Hurricanes, they got some questions to answer after what was what in the heck happened in game number 2 tonight.
I would say more of a roar than a meow at this point, but yeah, it's a lot of cats right now. Florida, a solid game 1 win on the road, 5-2 to open up the Eastern Conference Finals. Game 2, more of the same, a 5-0 shutout victory. The defending champs again are looking really strong. Let's waste no time and get a report from our guy Armando Velez, the host of Locked On Florida Panthers, who I'm pretty sure is in a good mood right now.
It's a dominant performance for the Cats in Raleigh. What is up, guys? Armando Velez here for the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, here to quickly break down the Panthers' 5-0 win over the Carolina Hurricanes, where it was the second line setting the tone and frustrating the top line for the Canes, where Andrei Svechnikov committed 2 turnovers that ended up in the back of the net, and then committing a penalty that resulted in the Panthers converting on the power play. The Panthers had to manage losing Sam Reinhart at the end of the first period, and also led the shot advantage once again, 11-4 in the second period, 17 shots against in the entire game. They added on another power play goal in the third period. The Panthers set a record with 43 goals in 9 road playoff games. And Sergei Bobrovsky, it's May 22nd, and 3 years in a row on May 22nd, Bob gets a shutout. We're going to break all this down and more on tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, your team every day.
And thanks to Armando Velez for that report. As yes, his Florida Panthers looking good, as you could tell from his demeanor, from his enthusiasm. He's enjoying things right now. Let's start off though with the winning side on this one, Shu. I mean, Florida rolling right now. I know that they had a slow start against Toronto, but obviously got the big Game 7 win, and they moved right back into this series against Carolina. I think they had 1 day off, and they were right back at it, and they have not missed a beat so far in these 2 games.
If you can find one word to best describe the Florida Panthers right now, it would be relentless. I mean, all it took was 1 minute and 17 seconds of game time before the game's first goal that was scored by Gustav Forsland. And it was just one of those instances where when you thought if you were the Carolina Hurricanes, you could try to set it up right in terms of trying to get a clean play out of your own end, it just said no. And when I say it just said no, the Florida Panthers forecheck said, we capitalize on mistakes like Panthers capitalize on its prey when it's hungry. And the Florida Panthers, let's face it, tonight, they said no to every single time that the Carolina Hurricanes thought they could find their own game and said, no, we're going to do everything right. We're going to do the small things exceptionally well. And the thing is this. As much as I, as a Bruins fan, have bemoaned about Sam Bennett over the last couple of years in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but there is one thing that has to be said about this man, and that is the fact that he is absolutely clutch and an absolute on-ice killer when it absolutely matters. I mean, how many times have we seen Sam Bennett step up huge throughout the playoffs, and even going back for Team Canada during the Four Nations tournament? And tonight, I mean, in a game in which that you obviously get the goaltending from Sergei Bobrovsky, but also when you talk about shot blocking, forechecking, defending in their own end, completely dominating on terms of like the defensive play and everything else, you got that all in spades with the Florida Panthers, and that is exactly why they're looking pretty right now. They're just 2 wins away from going back to the Stanley Cup Finals for the third consecutive year.
Yeah, Sam Bennett may certainly cross the line on occasion, but he is, I mean, I would love to have him on my team. He is a killer. He comes up big in the clutch moments, not just the hits and the physical play and the intimidation. You mentioned relentless, that's him, but scoring. And he can play defense too. He's a really all-around strong player, but he elevates his game in the postseason, exactly the type of player so many teams were looking for. Think of the Toronto Maple Leafs, for example.
Yes.
He had 2 goals in this one. He's now got 9 goals this postseason. He's tied with Mikko Rantanen for the postseason leading goals. It's not just the physical play. He gets it done in the big moments. He's absolutely a killer. Matthew Tkachuk had been silent for a long time, but a 9-game goalless drought comes to an end for him. So that's not good news for Carolina or whoever, Florida. If they advance in the next round, it's Tkachuk. Maybe he gets his game on track. Yeah. But so many stats are impressive. 3 goals on 5 shots for Florida. 18 different Panthers have scored this postseason. 13 goals from their blue line. Last 4 road games, they've got 22 goals. They've allowed 4. I mean, this is a team that knows what playoff hockey is all about, and they're showing it. They're putting on a clinic right now. And Sergei Bobrovsky's 6th career playoff shutout, 3rd this postseason, but only had to make 17 saves to get that shutout. Let's go over to the other side of this one, the Carolina Hurricanes, and we saw the elation and the excitement from Armando Velez. The opposite from our guy, Zach Martin, the host of Locked On Hurricanes.
Well, the Carolina Hurricanes lost again in Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Final, this time 5-0 instead of 5-2. So that's now 10 goals in the last 2 games for the Florida Panthers. And what is there to say about this game? The Panthers played the Hurricane system better, capitalized better, and have completely neutralized the Hurricanes in pretty much every facet of the game. Physical, winning board battles, shot attempts, high danger chances, just pretty much everything you can think of. The Florida Panthers have counted on the Hurricanes. And now they're up 2-0 in the series, with now going to Sunrise on Saturday, and now the Hurricanes are in desperate need of a win. They've won 3 times on the road, so anything is possible, but they have a big hill to climb now, down 2-0 in the Eastern Conference Final.
And you can obviously hear the concern in the voice of Zach Martin, see it on his face if you're watching on YouTube, and it's justified. I'm honestly wondering, and I'm trying not to be a prisoner of the moment, I'm honestly wondering, not can the Hurricanes win the series, can they win a game in this series? And that's not just the history. By the way, if you don't know, that's 14 straight losses in the conference finals for the Carolina Hurricanes franchise. Obviously 0-2 this year, and they had 3 straight series in their history where they didn't win a game making it to the conference finals. 19 years ago, 2006, the last time they won a conference finals game, and it was against the Buffalo Sabres, a team who hasn't made the playoffs in 14 straight years. That's how long ago it was. So it's been a while, but focusing on the now, it's going to be so difficult for them to go on the road and try and turn this thing around. It's basically one shift at a time. Just try and get one goal and go from there. But they haven't started well. They've been behind and have not been able to dig their way out of it so far. So it's certainly not over. The old cliche about losing on your home ice or whatever. Well, they've lost 2 in a row, so it's not a great start, but it's going to be a very uphill climb for Carolina, obviously.
Zach Martin's sigh was more stronger than any Carolina Hurricane wind that I've heard in the last 20 years. I mean, I'm not trying to be a prick, but for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to go and become a prick right now, because if you're Carolina, I watched the pregame show. ahead of game 2 tonight. And I'm listening to the Rod Brendamore's interview with Kyle Bukakis on Hockey Central on the pregame show. And the thing I walked away taking from it was this was a man who had absolutely no answers as to what type of adjustments was Carolina going to need to make in order to win game 2, which was a must-win game, obviously, for the Carolina Hurricanes. And in that first period, I was just shaking my head as to they just had no answer. It didn't matter what they did. And even when Sebastian Aho scored that goal, and you're thinking, okay, this is maybe a tide of a turning that's turning a little bit here, and that gets wiped off because it's offside. I'm like, yeah, that was the last little glimmer of hope. And Carolina has not had any sort of success offensively. They've had absolutely no answer in terms of neutralizing Florida's forecheck in the way that defended in front of Sergei Bobrovsky. But worst of all, Carolina has scored a grand total of 2 goals in these 2 games. Obviously, both goals came in game number 1. And if now they're going on the road and they've lost 13 in a row, Eddie, in terms of the conference finals games, I am starting to smell blood in the water, if you will. And the Panthers, they smell blood from its prey, and they're going to be looking to pounce when they get to Sunrise for Saturday's game number 3.
Armando Velez mentioned it. Andrei Svechnikov, he needed to step his game up in game 2 for Carolina. He was awful. He had 2 turnovers that led to goals. He took a stupid penalty on Matthew Tkachuk that led to a 3rd goal. He was the opposite of exactly what they needed. Frederik Andersen was probably the best goalie through the first 2 rounds, and I'm not saying it's all his fault because he's not getting any help, but he got pulled after 2 periods and they put in Peter Kochetkov. I assume they'll go back to Anderson in game 3, but he needed to continue to be the goalie we saw the first 2 rounds. He hasn't been. One down note for the Panthers, and I think Armando mentioned this as well. Sam Reinhart did leave the game. Took a low hit from Sebastian Aho, maybe a bit of a dirty play into the knee. Looked like a knee injury. Left, didn't return. So for the Panthers, that's the one worry they have going forward. But a 2-0 series lead for the defending Stanley Cup champs, looking good and heading back home for game number 3. The Stars flipped the script on the Oilers in game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. Will Edmonton respond in game 2? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On NHL Game Night. There is nothing like playoff hockey, the energy, the rivalries, the nonstop action with Stanley Cup playoffs heating up. There's never been a better time to see it live, and Game Time makes getting in the building fast and affordable. Game Time gives you last-minute ticket deals, zone deals for deep discounts, panoramic seat views, and all-in pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ticket plans often drop as you get closer to the start of the game. You can score big without overpaying. See the exact seat before you buy it, and you can check out with total confidence. Game Time includes fees up front and backs every order with their ticket coverage guarantee, covering cancellations and even offering 24-hour returns. And speaking of planning ahead, the NFL schedule release is out, and you better believe it is time to pick your games to watch for the upcoming NFL season, as Game Time makes scoring NFL tickets just as easy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Drew, we have another game coming up in the Stanley Cup playoffs. On Friday, it is game 2 in the Western Conference Finals between the Edmonton Oilers and the Dallas Stars. Dallas pulling out a 6-3 win in game 1, rallying down 3-1 in the 3rd period. Now, Edmonton, coming into the series, set an NHL postseason record. They had 5 from behind wins so far this postseason, but Stars flipped the script on them. They're the ones that are able to come back thanks to their power play and an impressive 6-3 win. I certainly don't think the Oilers are going to, be too concerned. Obviously, they would have liked to have held on to that lead and win game 1, but they were behind 2-0 to my LA Kings, and it didn't seem to bother them. And obviously, on the road, it's not going to be easy, but certainly a nice win for the Dallas Stars. The way they were able to get it, coming from behind, and with their power play clicking as well.
And you could say that the power play for the Stars has been the biggest difference so far early on in this Western Conference Finals, because last year's the Dallas Stars power play was 0 for 14 in that series against the Edmonton Oilers, which the Oilers won in advance to the Stanley Cup Finals. But in game number 1, what I thought was the most impressive aspect of their comeback after being down 3-1 going into the third period was the fact that the Stars scored 3 straight goals all on the power play in the third period. And I think that in itself really, and I mean truly, goes a very long way when you talk about getting confidence on the man advantage. And that's exactly what the Dallas Stars have in spades in this postseason. But also, I've talked about in the past about other players on the Dallas Stars needing to step up huge offensively. Tyler Seguin, he turned back the clock. And him scoring those 2 goals was absolutely huge. He was part of a 3-point night. And I think that if you're the Dallas Stars, you've got to feel really good about, yes, how they were able to show resilience, but you also know and understand that you have to start the game on time, because I don't think Edmonton's going to blow too many 3-1 leads late in the game in order to win hockey games in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But as far as the Edmonton Oilers are concerned, I am concerned about the goaltending, and it's for good reason, because when I look at the series between Ottinger and Stuart Skinner or Calvin Pricker, whoever's going to be in net, I look at Edmonton, I say, listen, you cannot afford to make mistakes. You cannot afford to allow Dallas to go on the power play, and that's something that I'm going to be paying very close attention to in game number 2 for the Edmonton Oilers, avoiding those mistakes, avoiding the letdown, and then for Dallas, continuing to build off of what was an impressive comeback win in game 1.
Yeah, for the Oilers, their penalty kill has been one of the worst so far this postseason. It's the one clear area that they've been really bad at so far in the playoffs. So at this point, there's not a lot you're going to be able to change, but I guess the best thing is to try and stay out of the penalty box as much as possible. You mentioned the goaltending for Edmonton. Stuart Skinner, feast or famine for this guy. 2 wins in the postseason, 2 shutouts. But in his 4 losses, he's allowed 20 goals. And even with my limited math skills, I know that's 5 goals per game. He will get the start in game 2 because Calvin Pickard is unavailable. He didn't make the trip to Dallas as he's still nursing the injury. They think he can return if necessary at some point in the series, but obviously it will not be for game number 2. So Stuart Skinner, who's a guy who he can either be really good or really mediocre at times so far. We saw in game 1, obviously pretty mediocre. Not mediocre, though, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. McDavid didn't have a goal, but he had several grade A break-in opportunities. You know, you hold your breath if you're another team or another team's fans when you see him get the puck with speed. He did it more than once in that game, but couldn't convert, and Leon Draisaitl did have a big goal. So the 2 big guns for the Oilers ready to go, maybe a little bit more. I know, you know, Connor McDavid, he's kind of interesting how he's kind of evolved as a player. More interested, it seems, now in having the offense go through him and being a facilitator rather than a finisher. And I think though at times though he might need to be a little bit more of a finisher. I know it's certainly worked well the last few years. They go to the Stanley Cup Finals last year, but we'll see. I mean, he's still dangerous. He's still great. But there are sometimes moments I think maybe Oilers fans would like to see him try and score a little bit more than try and get everybody else going.
And I think that's going to be really critical in this series if you're the Oilers in terms of McDavid. And I think that one thing about McDavid that I really am curious to see is in this matchup between McDavid, Draisaitl, and as well as the defensemen of the Dallas Stars, most namely Thomas Harley and Heiskanen as well. I'm curious to see, like, how will they be able to exploit like the defense of the Dallas Stars? And I do think that in order to do that, you have to be a lot more assertive with the puck. That means, you know, shooting, especially if you have have a great opportunity to score, you know, shoot the puck more often, not trying to, you know, settle for trying to like set up everybody else or anything like that. And I do think that for Edmonton, like they have to do a lot better in terms of their penalty kill. Their penalty kill has been a major issue. And the issue is that when you're going up against a team whose power play it could be rather be lethal, you can't afford to have a penalty kill if you're Edmonton that is going to allow power play goals, because those are the same goals that will absolutely break the back of a team. And that's something that I'm going to be curious to see about in game number 2. And that is in terms of for Edmonton, the penalty kill. What will Coach Knobloch do to try to fix the penalty kill? Because this is the kind of series where if you're not careful, this is an issue that can certainly come back to bite you in the rear end.
I think if you're the Oilers, you probably feel like you let one slip away. If you're Dallas, you probably think we got to get off to a better start. We don't want to have to rely on a big third period comeback to be able to get a win. So we'll see if Dallas can get off to a better start, and we'll see if Edmonton, if the lead, can close it out in the third period. But Dallas with the 1-0 series lead as we go into game number 2 of the Western Conference Finals in Dallas. We had a change in Toronto and a new head coach in Chicago. We'll talk about that and more next on Locked On NHL Game Night. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's an in-game shot or a breakout player, there has never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and during the game with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more wins than ever to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments, and how could tracking their trends help you build your next big bet? What would it look like to combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds? If you've got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up with a same-game parlay? How could a $200 bonus bet add to the excitement if your first $5 bet wins? New to FanDuel, it is the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Shuey had some NHL news to discuss, and one of the head coaching vacancies has been filled. The Chicago Blackhawks have hired Jeff Blashill as their next head coach. If that name sounds familiar, he was the head coach of the Detroit Red Wings for 7 seasons. He was most recently an assistant coach for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't think this was the Blackhawks' first choice as their head coach, but they will settle on Jeff Blashill. And look, there's been plenty of examples in sports where the first choice may not have, where the second choice or the third choice, sometimes that guy does work out. So we'll see if it's Jeff Blashill or not. I don't know that Blackhawks fans are going to be particularly excited about this hire. This is not a hire I think that you get really excited about, but we'll see how Jeff Blashill does in his second chance at being an NHL head coach. I'm
curious to see how it would all turn out, because you talked about how this isn't his first head coaching gig. He was the head coach in Detroit from 2015 until 2022. And the thing that I look at is that a lot of those years, Detroit was in a rebuild, and he did have experience coaching some of the younger guys, including Dylan Larkin when he first came up as well. And I just think that if you're Jeff Blashill, one of the things that you're most excited for is the opportunity to coach and mentor Connor Bedard. And I think that's part of the reason why the Blackhawks made the choice to hire Jeff Blashill. Again, this is just an opinion. I'm not an insider, just for the people that are watching or listening. I'm just giving you my opinion. I think part of it is because of the fact that they know what he did when he was in Detroit, even though, yes, he did have a losing record, but watching him and knowing that he can coach and mentor and help mold young players. And obviously, Chicago, they do have some veteran presence on this team as well, most namely their captain, Nick Foligno. So I do think that even though that this wasn't their first choice, I do think it's a sound decision, not a great one, not one that's gonna make you say, "Oh my God, I can't wait," but one where it's okay, let's see what he does with a second opportunity as the head coach of an NHL team.
Also, big news as Brendan Shanahan, the Hall of Famer, president of the Toronto Maple Leafs, is out after 11 seasons. His contract is up. They announced they were not going to renew his contract. Let's get a report on this from our guy from Locked On Maple Leafs, David Morisuti.
It's the end of an era for the Toronto Maple Leafs, who decided to not renew the contract of President Brandon Shanahan following their second round playoff exit against the Florida Panthers. David Morsuti here from the Locked On Leafs podcast. And to no surprise to many, the Leafs decided it was time to end the era of the Shanahan plan, as they will now be moving forward. We do not know yet if there will be a replacement at president. We will find out from MLSE CEO Keith Pelly whether or not the team will plan to do a search for a new president or go without one. One thing we do know, though, according to Sportsnet Elliot Friedman, Brad Treliving will stick around as general manager. Whether or not other people will be departing with Brandon Shanahan, we won't know that probably until a press conference set for Friday. Mike DeStefano and myself will break down this news and more on the next edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks again to David Morsuti, one of the co-hosts of Locked On Maple Leafs, for that report. So Brendan Shanahan, you talked about a rebuild in Chicago. He took over a rebuild in Toronto. He was responsible for getting the core four together. Certainly plenty of regular season success, but of course, the postseason success was not there. They did not make it out of the second round of the playoffs in any of the seasons that he was on the job. He hired a new GM. He hired a new coach, and that didn't work. And so after that happens, you're kind of the next guy to go. And that's what happened for Brendan Shanahan.
Oh, for sure. And when the Toronto Maple Leafs lost Game 7 to Florida, you knew that changes were coming. There was no question about it. And we're now seeing the dust settle quite a bit in Toronto, and Brendan Shanahan is not going to be returning as the team president anymore. Now, I think this was certainly the right decision. I think that a new voice is certainly needed. But what I am most puzzled by, above all else, is the decision to keep Brad Treliving as the team's general manager for right now. And I wonder, like, why keep Brad if you're going to let go of Brendan Shanahan? But that's neither here or there. But I do think about what Shanahan leaves behind. He did construct the core four of Matthews, who's number one pick of the 2016 NHL draft. William Nylander, he was the 8th pick of the 2014 NHL draft. Mitch Marner, he was the 4th pick of the 2015 NHL draft. And obviously John Tavares, he signed a free agent back in 2018. So what I look at is that you did have a team that contended during the regular season, but ultimately, time and time again, this team fell short in the playoffs. You only got out of the first round only twice, 2023, and then again this season. So the Maple Leafs said, you know what, change is needed. It's time, and it's going to be interesting to see the direction that they're going to go in next, because they have a major decision that they're going to have to make in terms of Mitch Marner's contract. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent this July 1st. So I'm curious to see what do the Maple Leafs do moving forward, especially in the case of Mitch Marner, and as well as, are they going to name a new team president, or will the front office be streamlined?
And for Shanahan, he may already have his next job lined up before the Leafs decided to announce they weren't going to renew his contract or sign him again. The New York Islanders had asked for permission to speak with him about joining their front office. So we could see Brendan Shanahan joining the New York Islanders. Before we go, I did want to mention we did have a bit of a hockey upset at the World Championships as Denmark beat Canada 2-1. That's a Canadian team that had Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon on it. I'm going to put you on the spot, Shu. There's really only one NHL player on the Denmark squad. Can you name that player? Western Conference, Canadian team.
Edmonton?
No, he's going to be a big unrestricted free agent this offseason.
Oh man.
All right, time's up. Nikolai Ehlers of the Winnipeg Jets.
Nikolai Ehlers, of course.
Really the only NHL player on Denmark's roster. But the game was played in Denmark. They did have a big home ice advantage, so a huge upset win at the World Championships. Denmark shocking Canada by a score of 2-1.
Also, which also means that it was likely the very final game of Marc-Andre Fleury's career, as he had been playing for Team Canada as well. So I just had to throw that in there just before we wrap up this episode. And what a run it's been for both his NHL career and obviously representing Team Canada, whether it be at the Olympics or even on the international stage.
That is very true. All right, so we are through 2 games of the Eastern Conference Finals, and the defending champion Florida Panthers with a 2-0 series advantage now heading home, and we will have Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals coming up on Friday with the Dallas Stars leading it 1-0. You got a taste of some of our local experts. Make sure you check out the Locked On show of your favorite NHL team to get the latest news and reactions to everything that's going on. I'm Eddie Garcia. He's Shukri Wrights. Thanks for listening and watching Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.